am Joseph from the land of coconuts. Now I'm going to present you an important topic on God. How many gods are there? Are they all same? These are the primary questions I'm going to deal with in the next few minutes. While discussing that, we will also have to discuss who is God or what is God and what's its definition. Now, in the beginning itself, we'll make it very clear to you that this is an educational video. These are my convictions. You don't have to agree with my convictions. Now, when we talk about the subject called God, we must understand our limitations first. We are human beings. We are limited human beings. We are finite and we are not eternal. We are limited by time and space. Therefore, we cannot comprehend, understand God completely or the things that are related to Him. We must keep this particular limitation in our mind when we deal with a complex subject like God. Now, who is God or what is God? What's His definition? When I talk about God, I am talking about Ishwar or Brahm or the superpower, the creator of the whole universe, the sustainer. He is beyond time and beyond this space. He is the ultimate power. Some of you may ask, is there a God? Does God truly exist? Now, the purpose of this video is not to defend the existence of God, but still let me make this statement clear. A reasonable person, a rational person has to agree to the fact that there is a God who exists today. Let me give an example. Let's look at the world around us. There is so much of design, there's so much of beauty in the whole thing. Let's take an example that we use day-to-day life, say the mobile, cell phones that we use. Can we say that mobile phones were manufactured by a company or a designer or a particular person, or should we say this was a result of an explosion in an electronic factory? Definitely, that second explanation does not make sense. We know for sure that there's a person who designed the mobile phone and somebody made it. It's a company is behind the whole thing. So in other words, if there is a design, there has to be a designer. Therefore, we can safely, rationally come to the conclusion that God exists. Now, what is this basic definition of God? God is the only being whose cause for existence is in Himself. God is the only being whose cause for existence is in Himself. Our existence is outside of us, but God's existence is within Himself, His cause. Now, let me explain a little bit more on the definition of God. When we talk about God, we are talking about a person. He is the first cause. He is eternal. He is all-powerful. He is all-knowing, present everywhere at the same time. And He is the most perfect being. He is the only essential being. And He is the only uncaused being. Now, we can definitely ask a question, why God has to be a person or at least a person? Now, we did not come from evolution. God created us. The theory of evolution is not scientific. It's just a postulation, just a theory. It's not scientific. Now, God has created us and we are human beings. So in other words, we have personality, we are persons. We have intellect, we have morality, and we have emotions. These are the three essential ingredients of a person. Therefore, we say God is not a force, God is a person. Why are we persons? Because we are persons, because our parents are persons. Why are our parents persons? Because their grandparents are persons. The argument goes on and goes on, and ultimately it reaches the first cause. That being has to be a person. We are persons, therefore the first cause, which is God, is a person, or He is at least a person. God is beyond us. So there can be elements that are additional to a personality. So therefore we say God can be at least a person. Why God has to be eternal? Because God has been there from the beginning, from the end, from the beginning, and there is no end to God. A concept of a God who is dead or who is going to be dead does not make sense. Again, why God has to be all-knowing, all-powerful and present everywhere? Because a limited God does not make sense. Can you imagine a God does not have enough knowledge? God doesn't know that corona is going to come to the world and is going to end at this point of time. Can we imagine a God who is not really powerful? He does not have control over things, or he is not present everywhere. He is present only certain places. Now, this God does not make sense, does not fit into a basic definition of God. Therefore, God has to be all-knowing, all-powerful. Now, why God has to be all good? It's simply because a bad being can't be perfect, and God is perfect by definition. Therefore, a perfect God has to be all good. You might ask me, where did I get the definition of God? Where did I get it from? It is through logical thinking, rational process, and not taken from any religious book. If you are a reasonable person, you have to come to this conclusion of a God with these specifications, with these characteristics. Moving on, how many gods are there? Is there more than one God? There is a philosophy called polytheism. Poly means more than one. Polytheism means a philosophy that says there are more than one God exists. Now, when we talk about God here, we are talking about the G-O-D, the capital G. Now, if there are more than one God, which God, who will rule over others? Who will be the supreme power? Who created who? I mean, which God created the other God? This does not make sense. Therefore, the safest logical conclusion is to say that God is only one and one being. But practically, I know that we live in a country where there are many gods and goddesses. Are they all same? One and the same? No, they're very, very different. Now, just to give you an example, I respect all religion. I have friends from almost any kind of faith. And let me say this with all respect and love for all religion. God of Muslims and God of Christians and God of Hindus, God of Jews or Sikhs, if you study that, you will find that they are superficially the same, but fundamentally they are different. If you take about the concepts of God in all these different philosophy or religion, you will find that they are superficially same, they are fundamentally different. In logic, there is a basic law called law of non-contradiction, LNC. It primarily says that opposite propositions cannot be true, or opposite statements cannot be true at the same time in the same sense. It simply means opposite things are not true. Now, let me give an example. Suppose I make a statement that I went to the market yesterday, and then I make another statement that I did not go to the market yesterday. Now, these two statements are opposite statements, because the first one I claim I went to the market yesterday, second one I say I did not go to the market yesterday. And both cannot be true in the same time and the same sense. Either I went to the market yesterday or I did not go to the market yesterday. Both cannot be true. Both cannot be right. Therefore, if one person compares to different philosophies or different religion, we find that the concepts of God are not the same, they're very different. Therefore, we can come to the conclusion that all concepts of God can be wrong, but all cannot be true and right according to the law of non-contradiction, because there are direct, diametrical opposites, contradictions in the concepts of God in various philosophies. Let me illustrate this with an example. God in Hinduism is primarily is an imperson, but Islam teaches as a personal God. One is imperson, other one is person. Again, these two both cannot be right because both are opposite. Another example, God of Islam, as I said, believes in one God, monotheistic, one God. God of the Bible, God of the Christianity, is also one person, one God, but exists in three different persons. One God, but three different persons. Again, there are contradictions within this philosophy. So therefore, again, these two cannot be right. Both can be wrong, but both cannot be right. This is how we understand the law of non-contradiction. Non-contradiction. Therefore, any proposition, any statement, any philosophy, any religion to be true, it has to pass the test, basic test of logic called law of non-contradiction. Any test, any religion, any philosophy that does not pass this test cannot be called, it's not a coherent one, it's not a reasonable one, it's not logical one. We cannot accept this as true. Therefore, both this varying or directly opposite philosophies cannot be true. Now the question is, why then there is polytheism? Why people believe there are more than one God exists? I think my answer is a very simple answer. It's because of man's selfishness. We want to justify what we do. So therefore, it's a safe way to believe that polytheism exists. But it does not stand the test for truth. Now, we come to the important question. If God exists, and if there is only one God, and if all gods are not same, then which God is true? Which God is right? And who is the one that fits the definition well? This is my conviction with all my love and respect for all religion and philosophies. Let me say this with all humility that I can possibly have. I believe that God of the Bible is the true God. God of the Bible fits the definition of God. No other religion or philosophy fulfills the definition of God like Bible does. Therefore, Bible presents a personal God who created all, sustains all powerful, eternal, loving and all good God. Therefore, God of the Bible is the only true God. This is what I believe. We can't change God according to our convictions and conveniences. Truth is truth even if no one accepts it. Truth is truth even if no one accepts it. Coming to the conclusion summary, God is the only being whose cause for existence is in himself, that is not outside of him. God is a person, eternal, all powerful, all good qualities only we find in him. There is only one God and one true God. I believe God of the Bible is the only true God that fits the definition of God. Let me conclude with this quotation. A lie will never become true just because all believe in it. In the same way, a truth will never become a lie just because no one believes in it. Let me repeat it. A lie will never become true just because all believe in it. And a truth will never become a lie just because no one believes in it. Thank you.
I will worship you with all of my heart. I will seek your face.